Hello, welcome, and thank you for checking out the A Mighty Friendship session of our 2026 Summer Leadership Series. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation, I want to take a minute to discuss what this presentation is going to entail, what it will cover, and what it will not. Though this session will address what material we expect new members to be taught, that's not the main focus of the session. That information is easy to find, and put simply, it's even easier to regurgitate. Instead, the focus of this session is how you, as a new member educator or potential new member educator or person who's interested in new member education in any capacity, really, can help set clear expectations for your new members and cultivate an environment that will help your new members be the best learners and brothers that they can be. The new member education process is different for every chapter, and the requirements are different on every campus. Some organizations have single tier membership, they don't have pledges at all. Some have 2 week new member ed programs, some take 8 weeks or stretch into an entire semester. But the idea of introducing the chapter to new members is basically universal. And really, when members are introduced to the chapter and how long they're educated is not as important as how they are taught and what they learn from their brothers, both explicitly and implicitly through behavior. Second, though it will also come up briefly, one thing that won't be explored in depth in this conversation is hazing. We want to focus on what to do and not exactly what to avoid. It will undeniably come up, but that isn't like the main focus of the session. If you have questions about hazing and you kind of want to learn what resources are available to you either at your campus or what information we at Sci Upsilon have, reach out to me about it, or reach out to your chapter services coordinator or main point of contact, whoever that may be. Their contact information will be in your chapter's Asana page, same as this recorded session and all of these sessions of our summer leadership series this summer. So if you have extra questions on that, please feel free to check out Asana and reach out to us at the international office so we can answer some of your questions. So diving right into the meat and potatoes of the session, I want to start off by discussing what some of the goals of new member education are. The overall purpose of new member education, as described in the fraternity's constitution specifically, is to provide a thorough and comprehensive orientation into Psi Upsilon, to explore its history, its international structure, its philosophy, its values, ideals, traditions, ritual, song, programs, things like that. Also, to create a sense of responsibility and commitment to the college or university and to Psi Upsilon as a whole, to develop a clear understanding of the new member's future role in the chapter and contributions that they can make as a member, to develop a sense of unity and camaraderie within the brotherhood, to provide a helpful working knowledge of how the chapter on its own operates both as an organization and as a property or a chapter house, if you all have a chapter house, if your chapter has a chapter house. New member education also serves to encourage and motivate new members to develop potential managerial and leadership skills, a lot of the soft skills that we talk about that our members benefit from simply by being in an organization like this, learning how to work with others and hold leadership positions, and to kind of guide new members towards improvement as an individual and as a member of their community. That's a lot of big words, but put simply, the big point of new member education is to teach incoming members about the fraternity and to make them feel like they're a part of the chapter. So, what should not be a part of a new member education program? When you're developing a curriculum or figuring out how you're going to educate your members, what do you avoid? One thing that you absolutely do not want your members to get the impression of is that they have to earn their right to be a member. New members have already kind of received a bid to join. They do not have to like prove themselves to the chapter through competition, through surviving hazing, anything like that. And earning your right to be a member isn't something that happens during a new member education or when you're a pledge. You earn your right to be a member every day after you initiate. You earn your right to be a member by showing up to service events, by being there for your brothers when they need you, by paying your dues, being a good member of society. You don't prove that you've earned the right to be a member when you're a pledge. You do it every single day after you initiate, basically. One big thing that, while awesome, should not be the main focus of your new member education program is pledge class unity. Pledge class unity is awesome and it happens, but it's easy and it doesn't take a lot of work. If your pledges are spending time together and they're actually attending new member education and they're spending time with the chapter, they are going to get to know each other. That unity will happen. Your focus should be on chapter unity. Like new members and pledges are not just joining a pledge class, they are joining a fraternity, they are joining the whole organization. So they should feel connected to everyone in the organization, not just people who joined at the same time as them. Focus on relationships with everyone, not just those that are joining. And also, obviously, hazing. Um, some members kind of expect hazing or kind of just want, like, I apologize, English. Hazing is quite common, and it's something that sometimes people even expect thanks to pop culture and media coverage. Some people, when they join a Greek organization, even go in thinking that they want hazing. They're looking for like a rite of passage or a meaningful experience. And some hazing events can seem like a rite of passage in some way, and they can stick out in your mind, certainly. But these are really lazy and unnecessary ways to create a rite of passage or forge a meaningful experience, especially since we're a values-based organization. How can we stick by our values if we're treating our pledges and our new members poorly? Like, not to brag or anything, but I was a member of a Psi Epsilon chapter. I've made lifelong ride or die friends, and I did it without physically, mentally, or psychologically abusing them. So, I mean, if you're relying on hazing to encourage members to bond, then you simply are being lazy about it. You are being cringe, and I would encourage you to not do that. So now that we've basically covered what you should not focus on when you're creating a new member education program, let's talk about the kind of environment that we do expect from not only new member educators, but the chapter as a whole, really. The one golden rule you want to remember, whether you are a new member educator or just a brother in any position, really, is that what we do is more important than what we say. Actions speak much louder than words. As the new member educator, one of the important responsibilities you will assume, or any brother will assume really, is holding new members accountable and laying out expectations for them, the same way that the Archon and the Executive Council hold current brothers accountable. New member education sets the tone for the rest of the members' experience. And if you don't put any effort into teaching, then the new members just aren't going to put any effort into learning either. If you give off the impression that it's really not a big deal if somebody blows off coming to chapter or if they don't complete their service hours and whatnot, new members are going to look at that and they are going to learn by example. It is essential that you hold new members and older members to the same standards. When new members are told that they can't do something, but they see older brothers doing that same action and not being disciplined, it has the potential to manifest as the perception that that unwanted behavior is a benefit or a privilege of membership. And that significantly increases the likelihood that that behavior is going to become consistently more problematic and it's going to become a part of the culture as time goes on. If people feel like time in the chapter has earned them the right to do XYZ, to skip chapter, to not pay dues, to not live in the house or anymore, people are going to feel like they're entitled to that, and that's going to make a culture change difficult. As I mentioned before, an example, if younger members consistently see older members not attending meetings, the perception is going to be that, well, when I'm older, when I'm a senior, I'm not going to have to attend meetings. I'll have done my part and I'll be able to check out. So if older brothers are not held to that same standard and they're allowed to get away with not showing up to chapter, not paying their dues, not completing their service hours, not really being a part of the chapter until something fun is happening, then the younger members are going to learn from that example and they're going to expect that they'll be entitled to get away with things like that when it's their turn. So you need to ensure that all members are being held to the same standard. With that being said, I want to clarify that that doesn't mean that we're against pledge projects. For those who may be unfamiliar, pledge projects or new member projects, class projects are things that some chapters will do as part of their new member education curriculum, where either individual pledges, new members, or classes will be responsible for learning how to plan an event and planning an event together, or having a service project, or doing some kind of presentation based on Psi Upsilon research that they've done on their own. If you have a specific project that you want the pledges to lead, that's totally okay. I honestly highly encourage that. That gives pledges and new members the opportunity to learn how to do all the things that the officers are doing, to plan events, to carry out service projects, to learn about the history of the organization. That's not an issue. The issue is when pledges are consistently throughout the year expected to do things that older members are not allowed to do. If pledges and new members are, for example, the only ones that are tasked with cleaning the house, or the only ones that are expected to be sobers at social events, that habit is going to be really hard to kick, and it's going to be really difficult to encourage those new members to continue contributing when they become full members or seniors, because they'll think, I've done my time cleaning the house, that's pledge work. So in order to kind of eliminate that expectation and discourage that from becoming a cultural norm, you want to ensure that you are holding all members, regardless of seniority, to the same standards. So moving on away from actions speaking louder than words, how do you do the actual teaching part of being a new member educator? How do you do the education part? What does that look like? What should the education process look like for your chapter? Again, everyone does it a little differently, but what we found is ineffective is just having everybody line up and say things that they've memorized. Like if we're in a conversation and you can tell me right up the top of your head that the alpha chapter of Psi Upsilon was at Harvard, like, that's cool, that's impressive, but it's not immediately useful. And sticking specifically to, all right, can we get our new members and our pledges to memorize every little thing? Do you know what major every brother is? Do you know like what high school they went to? All of those small minutia, those small things you have to memorize, that's not really important, and that's not really the point of new member education. Instead, we want to encourage you not to rely solely on memorization, but to teach kind of like a teacher would in a classroom. Make the lessons engaging, focus not just on memorization, but exploration of the material. And this isn't something that you have to do on your own. In fact, I would encourage chapters to involve not just the new member educator in education, but many brothers. You could encourage senior brothers and alumni to help teach and lead sessions on things that they're interested in. For example, speaking to my own experience here, my favorite new member education session that I took when I was a pledge was led by someone who at the time was a senior going to be an alumni. And they were a member of, it was either the first or the second class that the chapter had ever had. So they were one of the founders or close to it. They were a massive vexillology nerd, study of flags, and they led a session on the chapter's history and explored our chapter's heraldry. And that was such a fun session because I could tell that the person who was, giving that lesson was genuinely interested in what they were teaching and they were knowledgeable in that area. And that passion was contagious. So I would encourage you to not own to, if you can, don't try to juggle all of the education on your own. See if you can bring in senior brothers, alumni, officers who may have something to teach the rest of the chapter. Have officers come in and explain their roles and duties and expectations. You could even have third parties come in, people who are not with the chapter, potentially people from like the international office or campus staff, leadership of IFC or other chapters. You can have them come in and give a lesson on really any material that you think the chapter would need to know. To tie this back to a previous summer leadership series session that we had, you could potentially, if you wanted to, bring in somebody to talk about a mental health topic of the chapter's choosing. That could be something like um, self care, how to have conversations with a brother that you think may be struggling, how to have a healthy school life balance, things like that. New member education doesn't strictly have to stick to the things that we lay out in like a mighty friendship, which I will go over a mighty friendship soon. It's a basic syllabus and how to guide that you can use if you want. But feel free to experiment and branch out with the kind of things you want to include in new member education. Next, I want to touch on assigning big brothers. How do you kind of choose how to assign which big to which little, which brothers should be big brothers, and what is the role of a big brother? The big brother is intended to act as a guide, mentor, a coach, a friend, and an advocate within the education process. I would encourage you not only to encourage big brothers to hang out with their little brothers, but also encourage them to be active participants in their little's education. Encourage them to attend new member meetings and events or new member ed sessions. Encourage them to check in on their little's progress during the new member ed process. Encourage them to check in with their little during the new member ed process and see how it's going. Encourage them to make sure that their little is doing well in their academics or if there are other things that they're struggling with. Potentially career oriented or resume oriented stuff. That's something a big brother could help with as well. Encourage the big brothers to provide support for members throughout their experience, even when their new member ed time is over and they are like an official full member. Encourage them to, throughout their brotherhood experience, act as a role model and a mentor. Being a big brother doesn't stop when you pass whatever new member ed exam or however your chapter chooses to end new member education. I would encourage you to, above all else, be intentional and thoughtful when you're assigning big brothers. Don't default to seniority. The eldest brothers, the seniors, should not always get first pick of who they want their little to be, and they do not always make the best big brothers. If, for example, some seniors in your chapter really just they're kind of like the, I've done my time, I'm ready to dip type of senior. They pop in only when it's time to pick littles and to party, then it probably won't be helpful for those new members or pledges to be assigned to a big brother who isn't really an active participant in the chapter, who doesn't set a good example. So if you shouldn't rely on seniority, then how should you assign big brothers? What are some things you can do? In a lot of the chapters that I've seen and visited, it varies a lot. But one tactic that I've seen a lot is members, like new members or pledges, will list their top three or top five choices for their big brother. Sometimes big brothers will also give lists of who they want. Either the new member educator can decide on their own, or the e-board or chapter as a whole can vote on like who should be assigned what big brother. And there are a lot of factors that you can consider when making those decisions. Sometimes chapters will assign big brothers based on who the chapter thinks can help their new members grow the most. For example, some shy littles may be given to confident big brothers or ones who are more sociable or connected with more people in the fraternity. Littles who are ambitious or potentially interested in an e-board or archon position down the road may be given an e-board or archon as their big to allow them to learn about what that role looks like. Some criteria to keep in mind when you're assigning bigs and littles could be area of study. Um, Sometimes it can be really helpful to have a big brother in a similar major who's taken similar classes to you, who knows what the professors are like, who may understand certain either math problems or, history lessons or something that you don't get. Uh, GPA, I think, is an important one to consider. Do your best to ensure that if littles need extra support, they get it. And also ensure that maybe big brothers who don't have awesome study habits and who may not be the best example academically aren't, given, yeah. Just make sure that when you are choosing bigs for your chapter, you're putting your best foot forward and you're ensuring that the big brothers that you choose are going to be good mentor figures for the littles. Some other factors you could think of are committee placement, like chair or executive board positions. Sometimes it's fantastic to give an e-board member or an archon a little because they can be a fantastic mentor. And also sometimes the Archon and E-board are already drowning in work and they can't do it. Ensure you have that discussion with the big brothers before you make assignments. Shared hobbies and interests can be other ones. If a big and a little are involved in similar clubs, that can be awesome too. That can be a great way to get them to connect. If they have similar career goals, things like that, those can all be great ways to determine which brothers would be great mentors for the littles. One thing I also want to touch on briefly is the process of cultivating belonging during the new member education process on and beyond, really. How can you do this? How can we cultivate belonging and make new members feel like they're a part of not only their pledge class or new member education class, but the chapter as a whole? This topic could be its own presentation, truthfully. Cultivating belonging is not something that you, as the new member educator, can do on your own. It's a chapter wide effort. This is where cultivating belonging is where we can create meaningful experiences without hazing. As mentioned previously, some things you can do to help new members' pledges feel connected to the broader chapter and help them create connections and cultivate belonging is to bring in speakers to host new member ed sessions with, whether they be alumni or campus staff, service org leaders potentially, senior brothers, so on and so forth. Encouraging big brothers to participate in new member education, the whole chapter truly should make an active effort to spend time with new members. This can be done in a variety of ways. Some chapters will have big and little hangouts or competitions. If those are above board and you're being safe and smart, then thumbs up. Some chapters will record not only bigs and littles, but entire lineages. So you'll be able to trace who your big's big was and who your big's big was, and so on and so forth. And those lineages will do bonding activities together. They'll go out to dinner or see a movie or have a board game night. And that can be a fun way to connect the new members and pledges to entire generations of brothers, not just their big and not just people in their pledge class. I cannot emphasize enough. Get alumni and senior brothers involved. Invite alumni to share stories and take time to meet with the new members and engage. Depending on where the new members are in their college experience, having someone who's on like the outside world and who's potentially in the job market and whatnot may be a really useful resource for them as they think about what their next steps are or they think about how they want to spend their time in college. There are other activities you could do. It takes time, but large events, big meals, attending kind of intramural sports events, holding big service events, setting up and kind of taking down equipment before and after events as a chapter. Really kind of just any activity that you guys can do together is a fantastic way to cultivate belonging. And like the more time that you all spend together, the more you work together, the more you'll bond, the more you'll be able to talk to each other. And though I could talk about the process of cultivating belonging, hosting events forever, I I'll won't waste well, that's the big topic of this presentation specifically. So I will save that for another time. I would be remiss as a session leader and educator if I didn't, albeit briefly, acknowledge and shout out some useful teaching tools and resources that you can use when you are either creating or editing your new member education syllabus and your new member ed plan. Some resources that I would highly recommend you check out if anything that I talked about during this presentation sparked your interest and you're curious to learn more. I highly recommend checking out, first off, A Mighty Friendship. That is Psi Upsilon's official new member education guide. It has a sample syllabus. It has a lot of discussion questions that you can use after the new members go through various rituals. It has an exhaustive list of topics that it's recommended you touch on during the new member education process. It has tips on how to be an effective teacher and an effective mentor within the chapter, and so much more. I cannot recommend checking out A Mighty Friendship enough. And you can find that in your chapter's Asana page. If I'm not mistaken, you can also find it on the Psi Upsilon website. I will talk more about Asana briefly once we get to the end of this pointed list. Definitely check out the Psi Upsilon website. The history tab on our website has a plethora of really interesting information. I would recommend checking out the archives as well. We have a lot of digital archives, old documents, old records of convention notes, history, almost anything you can think of. It is on the Psi Upsilon website. Psi Upsilon publications as well. The Diamond is one that I can think of at the top of my head. I definitely check out the website. There is a lot of useful information there. The college tablet is an immensely important and helpful resource. I would highly recommend you check it out. Read read through it or skim through it if you haven't touched it since your pledgeship, new member education, or even if you didn't touch it during your pledgeship. Check it out. There's a lot of awesome information in there. The Garnet and Gold books, undeniably, those have a lot of really helpful information on chapter procedure, ceremony, ritual, things of that nature. Um, those are both very helpful. Copies of those, if I'm not mistaken, those can be found on your Asana page as well. And if not, your chapter may have those on a chapter Google Drive. A lot of resources can be found in a Google Drive that your chapter has that's kind of just been like tossed away on somebody's like an alumni's computer and is kind of just rotting somewhere. So that exists. If you can find it, it's very helpful. The SciU Speaker Series. That is not directly related to new member education, but it's a fun resource. The SciU Speaker Series is a series of discussions, interviews that members of Psi Upsilon staff hold with notable alumni. So if you're kind of curious to learn what some of our alumni are up to, I would highly recommend checking out the speaker series. Recordings of the SciU speaker series can be found on our YouTube channel. They can also be found on the Psi Upsilon website. So that is a fun resource that I'd highly recommend checking out. Tightrope. Tightrope, tightrope, tightrope. Tightrope is an essential part of the new member education process for our chapters. Tightrope is how we ensure that all undergraduates, have the information they need to have a safe and fun time when they are on campus. If all of the new member or pledge class completes Tightrope by an acceptable deadline, then you actually get a slight discount on your risk management dues. So please encourage your members to complete Tightrope. To tie this back to a previous summer leadership series session, Tightrope also has a module on mental health, so I would definitely recommend checking that out. It's worthwhile even for its own sake, even if you've already completed Tightrope and you're not in new member education. And finally, Asana and the chapter Dropbox. Your chapter's Asana page, non-zero chance you're there right now. If so, hello, welcome. Each chapter has an Asana page where a lot of the resources I just mentioned and some others can be found. inside that Asana page is also a chapter Dropbox. In that Dropbox is a lot of the resources that I mentioned, alongside a copy of the Psi Upsilon Constitution, sample documents like bylaws, our risk management policy. A lot of really helpful information can be found in that Dropbox. So if there's information that you want to teach the new members that you're not quite sure where to find, check the chapter Dropbox in Asana and also reach out to us at the international office. If you have any questions about anything that I discussed here, or if there are other topics that you're curious about and you want to learn more about, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else at the international office. Our contact info can again be found in the Asana page. I hope this session was worthwhile. I hope you learned something. Thank you very much for your time today. Have a fantastic rest of your day.